Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. With host and founder Richard Case and co-host and retreat leader Kathy Ricconi. Join us every weekday at this time to discuss news, spend time in the Word, and receive answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, good morning, Kathy. Here we are.
Good morning.
In April. We're actually in the, I think, the fourth week of April when this airs. And man, time goes on, and it's really fun. We've been talking about prayer, finding truth in a world of chaos, of come and see. And the one thing that we talked about the checking of the Spirit or the unction of the Spirit is that it's a learning process. And he said, "I'll teach you." And I think you. What grade did you teach? What did you teach when you were
I taught
teaching?
high school.
High school. What did you?
High school, but I did children's ministry forever before. Also, so
okay.
A little bit of everything.
So when you taught, were all of your students get everything all at once, all at the same time?
That would be a joy, but no, that's not how it. That is not how it worked.
Okay. So what was your heart toward the students that were struggling with it?
Yeah, your heart is really to teach them in a way that they're going to learn. You want them to get it, to receive the information, to be able to employ it and practice it, and to really get it. And so my job was to deliver it in a way that they could do that.
Yeah. And how often would you try?
Oh, you'd try endless ways.
Yeah, endlessly, because
endless ways, truly. And if something didn't work, you'd make an adjustment here, and an adjustment. I really, I firmly believe a good teacher teaches a student in the way that they learn.
Right.
You're not calling them to adjust everything to how you like to teach. You look at what it is that speaks to them, and you find a way to teach them in the way that they learn.
Right. And your heart, because they were struggling and they weren't catching what you were teaching, did it go to judgment and you're angry at them because they just aren't getting it? Your heart didn't even go there. It was like, okay, my role is to teach.
Right.
Which means
so what can I do to shift that they can learn? By
definition, you have to learn it. Okay, I'll try it this way. And it's never out of judgment. It's always out of come and learn. And all I'm asking you, the only time there really is judgment is if they don't show up to the class. Is that I've given up. I don't want to learn, and I'm out. Well, then that's what you're going to experience. Is you're not going to have the privilege of learning this beautiful thing that I can teach you, but I have a heart to it. So God's viewpoint is not judgment. It's I understand that the ability to learn it may not be easy, fast, and quick, but that's okay with me. I'll stay with you. My role, like for example, when we just read yesterday, conviction of sin, and sin is just either what you're doing or what you're about ready to do isn't of me, and you're making your own choice about this. And by the way, it's not going to work out well for you. So I'm going to convict you of that. And the way I convict you of that is that I check you to have you stop and say, help me understand what's next. And the more that you understand that, and therefore I have to learn that. And that's the encouragement I want to give everybody, is that God's not saying, how come you're not learning it faster? Rather, just stay with me. I'm gonna keep working it and make it really, really, really clear to you, so that you can practice it. And it's this what we call the checking of the Spirit, and then the ability to hear what He has to say. See, that is universal. It's absolutely available to everybody. It's not hokey. It's not strange. it's part of the life of the Spirit. And as you learn it, it gives you the guidance to be able to keep walking and say, what you're about ready to do, I want you to stop and process with me. And for me particularly, what I get, and I have this because it can be in the form of, because people are self-centered and they do things that are just not right.
Right, ourselves included sometimes.
Yeah. And so you're in the middle of a discussion or you're in the middle of something, and I would like to say, and I'm about ready to say it, and I get that check, and I hear this, the way he talks to me, Rich, if I was you, I wouldn't say what you're about ready to say. It's like, okay, got it, or
I get a pretty quick hold your tongue, girl.
Or Rich, don't write that email, or no, don't do it this way, and so there's a learning of that, and God doesn't judge you, including when you fail. See, because I've done that, where I got the unction, rejected it, kept going, had a problem,
right?
Saw that it was not of God, and he said, well, remember back here when I checked you? Yep. Do you realize I was trying to help you there?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so let's learn it again. Don't worry about it. It's okay. Let's go. And let me teach you. He said there is a requirement, by the way, and you got to stay abiding with me, because it's not a system. And it's not something that you permanently have. It's a relationship that I have in you, and I have power that I can do it because I'm within you, to do it. So it's really pretty cool of how it works. But we all wanted to encourage everybody that you can learn it, and remember, it's a simple process. You get this check, and all he says is just stop for a second. Process with me. More. So like when I had the check I talked about yesterday, is that I got the check and all I said was, what's going on here? Okay, let me talk to you about this. Let me give you some insight. Let me give you some wisdom. Now that you have a heart to hear and you stopped to listen, let me explain it to you.
Right.
And then you go on until you understand it, and you go further with it. And you have clarity about it, which is the way he said, the Holy Spirit's job is to get you wisdom with great clarity, that you know that you know that you know. And by the way, and there's another element of that is be careful, and this is something I have to be careful of. Don't put a timeline on it. It's like, well, I want to know the answer now. He said, well, this may take a while, because it may be a step-by-step process, and you have to process with your spouse or process with your inner circle, and there's other ways of doing this. So relax, process, take it easy, and don't demand that I do anything, because if you do, you've just walked out of the kingdom.
Right. I think when you're bringing that up, I think it's important to pay attention to the fact that what you're saying to do there in that waiting and the processing and the step-by-step is countercultural. And that we will meet resistance in that within ourselves, within culture, with other people's deadlines and expectations. Resistance comes when we do anything countercultural. But if Jesus is anything, he is countercultural. Yeah. and as he walks us into this, we need to be prepared for resistance, but then prepared to say, hey, this is the way I want to go. I want to go where God leads. And it is worth resisting and taking my time and actually waiting on God and listening and letting him lead this process, regardless of what that looks like on the outside.
Yeah. And the one issue about that is remember, he says, I'll show you my way. I'll show you my path. I'll direct your steps. Keep thinking it's a journey. It's a path. It's not a destination. And that is that, well, just give me the answer and I'll go. It's, well, usually it's, let's take it step by step.
Right.
Because there's things you need to learn, including other people's free will choices that will determine, do you turn right or turn left?
Yep.
And I can't really show you that until you actually get to that fork in the road,
Right.
and find out how do they respond. I already know how they're going to respond, but you got to discover how they're going to respond. I'm not going to violate their free will, but given their free will, I'll show you, okay, now go this way. And that's why you keep looking at it differently. Usually that's the best way that I can help somebody be led by the Spirit is, okay, instead of saying, give me the answer, which is our preference, just give me the answer. And by the way, I have a heart to follow. So if you give me the answer, I'll follow it. He said, well, why don't we take it step by step? And so I said, don't worry about the answer. You'll get there. Why don't you ask him what's the next step? And clarify that. Wait till you get some answer, get some understanding. Then I'll take, okay, now what? Now what? Now what? If you look at it differently, and by the way, I'll guide you so that when you're in these forks in the road or you're encountering something, I'm going to give you peace and confirmation. And by the way, unity, all the things we've talked about. And I'll check you if you are about ready to take the wrong place. And all you have to say is, stop. What are you trying to show me here? And by the way, sometimes it's just you're about ready to go too fast. You're on the right path, but you're about ready to go too fast. So you got to just hold up a second. We're going the right direction, but just hold up. Wait for something. There's something else you got to learn. Then we can go. So don't get ahead of me. That kind of stuff. So it's pretty fun. And we'll keep talking about that. And if you got questions about that, check into the Spirit and how that all works, send them in and we'll answer that. But
absolutely,
we've been and Paul's been talking about this a little bit in Colossians, his prayer, Colossians 1:9-18, and we'll go further as we process that. But go ahead, Kathy, if you'd revisit. We started this several days ago, and we're going to come back to it. So Colossians 1:9-18.
Sure. For this reason, we also, since the day we heard it, do not cease to pray for you and to ask that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will and all wisdom and spiritual understanding, that you may walk worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing him, being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God, strengthened with all might according to his glorious power, for all patience and long-suffering with joy, giving thanks to the Father, who has qualified us to be partakers in the inheritance of the saints in the light. He has delivered us from the power of darkness and conveyed us into the kingdom of the Son of his love, in whom we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by him all things were created that are in heaven and that are on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things consist. And he is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning of the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he may have the preeminence.
Yeah. So he says that, we've talked about this, that I don't cease to pray. And remember, we learned in Ephesians or in Philippians, and what this is that as I'm reminding you to these people that you're associated with, I'm going to bring them to your remembrance. And in essence, he's saying, first of all, in order for me to pray that for you, what must be true of me? I must pray that this way for me.
Right.
I gotta be living this out. I can't be saying, I'm praying it for you, but I don't operate that way. No. I'm learning to live this way. And I'm praying this way for me. And then God's saying, I want you to help others learn this as well. So
receive the same. Yeah.
So it's about a process. And he says, first of all, we talked about this, that you're filled with the knowledge of his will and all wisdom and spiritual understanding, that your heart is, are you seeking me and my will first? Before you decide, and don't give me your list, and don't tell me what you want me to do.
Right.
I know more than you, and I want you to follow me so I can deliver to you the superabundant life. So I'm going to pray that you have that kind of a heart to hear, listen, and receive, and I will. And then he says that you would walk worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing him and being fruitful in every good work. And you correctly understood the essence of that. So what pleases God?
Faith.
Faith. Without faith, what does it say?
It is impossible to please him.
It's not possible to please him. So therefore, what pleases him is faith. And he says, so therefore, if you're going to walk worthy of me, he says two things, which is what he started with. In order to even start that, you have to have a heart to hear my will.
Right.
And that you would receive it with an expectation, with wisdom, how it applies to you, and all spiritual understanding. I'm going to tell you the context, the reasons, the why, what I'm up to. So you got to start with a heart to do that. And then two, you have to walk by faith into my answers. Okay, so he tells us what that is. That faith is this is Hebrews 11, is the certainty of what he speaks. He says, because I've created the world by speaking it, circumstances are subordinate to my power and
to my spoken word.
And to what I'm going to say. So by definition, if you have a heart to follow my will, what must we learn? He's got to do what? Speak his answers.
Right.
In his steps. So I got to hear that. I got to be able to hear that. He says, then, and as you hear it, it's not just, okay, you heard it. I have two more questions for you. Do you believe it? By the way, that turns into faith, which is certainty, is the definition. So, so that, if, for example, when after Joshua and Caleb had wandered around in the desert for 40 years with Moses, because nobody was willing to go, they were, but nobody else was. Moses dies. Everybody, all 2 million people that had said, no, I'm not going, had all died in the wilderness. Guess what? Children are born in the wilderness.
Right.
So now
there's a new generation ready to step into this promise.
And God says to Joshua, I promise you again, which you heard 40 years ago, and you believed it then, I'm gonna take you to the promised land. I'm gonna give you the promised land. And we already know there's giants there. We always know that they can't be defeated by human means. Did you hear what I said? Yes. Okay, now he said, what would please me and be worthy of me is that you believe it with certainty to such a level that you actually cross the Jordan and let's go. And we're going to take it city by city by city, and you're going to have to go to battle based on what I tell you every step of the way. Are you willing to go? And he says, I am. And then he says, oh, by the way, if we're going, Father, Joshua and Caleb, we're ready to go. Don't we have to take the rest of them? Yes. What do? Ask them. Are they ready to go? Because if they're not willing to go, then I'm not asking. Right. I'm asking not you to go alone. I'm asking you to bring them with you. Go ask them. Are you willing to go? And you can read this in Joshua 1:16. Joshua says, "Are you willing to go?" And they respond, "Yep, we'll go wherever you tell us, and we'll do whatever you want us to do. We're in. Let's go. We're there. We're ready to go. We believe it."
Right.
We do believe what you have to say. Okay.
Isn't that, just real quick, isn't that a beautiful picture of surrender?
Yeah.
In that particular case, they were literally surrendering to what Joshua as their leader was leading them as well. And it's such a beautiful picture of us surrendering to God. I believe what you're saying. We're going to go. We're going to follow you, step by step. Here we go.
Yeah. And go over to, he reiterates this even further. Go to Joshua chapter 5, read verses 13 to 15, because he's already crossed the Jordan. He said, I believe it. I'm willing to go. And they're headed toward Jericho. the first city. As he's going toward Jericho. Now remember, he's thinking battle, and that God's going to deliver us, but we're going to have to fight and go to battle in Jericho, which we're willing to do.
Right.
And he's a warrior.
Right.
He's military. I think I understand how this is going to go, and I'm getting ready to go. Okay, so he's on his way, and then this happens in verses 5:13 to 15.
And it came to pass when Joshua was by Jericho that he lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, a man stood opposite him with his sword drawn in his hand. And then Joshua went to him and said to him, "Are you for us or for our adversaries?" So he said, "No, but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come." And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and worshipped and said to him, "What does my Lord say to his servant?" Then the commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua, "Take your sandal off your foot, for the place where you stand is holy." And Joshua did so.
Okay, so first of all, because of the worship and take your sandals off because the ground you're on is holy, who was this?
This was God.
This was God. This was Jesus. And because throughout Scripture, God gives an admonition, and the people that understand this reinforce it. He never allowed angels to be worshipped.
Right.
He never allowed another human to be worshipped. Remember they tried to worship Paul, and he said, nope,
right,
don't worship me. I'm just a fellow traveler with you, so we got to worship God. No, don't worship me. Or Peter the same way. Nope, don't worship me. The angels would say, nope, don't worship me. But here he says, worship. And take your sandals off because this is me. And Joshua's question was what? Are you what?
Are you for me or are you for my enemies?
Yeah. In other words, are you here to support my plan? I got a plan. And the answer was an emphatic no.
Right.
It was...
Yeah, Joshua gave him an either or. Are you for me or are you for my enemies?
Yeah.
And the answer was no.
No.
Got it wrong.
Period. It's an emphatic absolutely not.
Wrong question.
And he says, no, I've come basically to lead you. And Joshua immediately understood and said, I just asked the wrong question. And so he says, what does my Lord, my God, say to his servant?
Yes.
I understand exactly what you're saying here. Instead of me telling you my plan, what makes me worthy and pleases you is I go the other direction. And I say, I'm neutral. What do you have to say to your servant? And the word there is I'm willing to hear and I'm willing to follow completely, because I don't have a say in your will. I just have to follow your will as a true servant because it's best and none better. And he said, so I get that, which was important for him to learn, because it wasn't just do you believe the promise?
Right.
Yes, I crossed the Jordan and we're ready to go. Okay, now I have to make that even clearer. Are you willing to follow my steps and hear what I have to say, believe what I have to say, and then experience what I have to say? What will make you worthy, what will make me happy, what will please me is that you follow me. Now that you understand the broader promise, it has to become specific, and it has to be step by step by step. And you're going to have to follow me every step of the way so that the promise is potential but not guaranteed, because you can thwart it while I'm delivering it because you walk away from taking the steps I need you to take the steps. And so don't say, great, I got the answer, see you later.
Right. Now I'm taking off on my own.
Yeah, it's I understand where I'm headed, and I understand the promise you've given me. Now I've got to learn to, every step of the way, what do you have to say to your servant? Because I want to stay worthy and I want to please you. And that's what Paul says in Colossians is have a heart to seek it. Now walk by faith, which by definition means you're surrendering your will. You are listening and hearing. You're letting him take you to faith to believe it. And then you're responding with obedience to the instruction to go that next step for God to fulfill what he's doing. That's why Paul says, I'm praying for you that you really understand this, that you walk worthy. And the key is what you highlighted is to please God, it has to be faith.
Yes.
Which means I have to be hearing what he says. I have to be processing. I have to let him take it to certainty. Yep, I got it. And then are you willing to take that next step?
Right.
And there's a lot packed into that one sentence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is, here it is.
And I love even the word for obedience. I know obedience isn't used per se in this verse, but is implied. The word for obedience in the Greek is a combination. It's like hupo, or something like that. I'm butchering it. But it is basically listening with a posture to surrender and submit.
Right.
And so that's a beautiful thing because it ties in all of that whole acting on faith starts with this, just like Joshua lifted his eyes in the beginning of that passage. It says he lifted his eyes and behold, he looked to God and the dialogue began and he was listening with an intent and a heart to step in obedience and submission.
Right. That's right. And in this case, after he understood that, then, in chapter 6, God says, what I want you to do is march around the city 7 times, blow the trumpet.
Right.
And Joshua,
that's not logical, but trust me on this.
And Joshua didn't have a plan B, and he didn't say, well, when that doesn't work, what do I do? It said, well, I've heard what you said. You've given me the faith to believe that. We are willing to take that step, obedience, because I believe what you said. And I am now fully pleasing to you. And that's what Paul is saying is, may you learn this, to be in that place of being worthy and always pleasing him and letting him deliver, what he wants to deliver. So we'll pick this up again next time. But this is such a critical statement that follows, have a heart to follow my will, and then learn to stay in that place of worthiness. And it's not about how good are you, it's about your heart.
Right.
Are you willing? And by the way, I'll speak. You'll be able to hear. I'll give you the checking. I'll give you the things of the truth. And then when you do it, I'm going to say, do you believe it? Most of the time you're going to say, I'm not yet. That's okay. Stay with me. And I'll make you worthy because you please me by what? Staying with me.
Right.
So it's pretty cool. So we'll pick this up again tomorrow. We'll come back to more of this beautiful prayer.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for joining us, everyone. If you have any questions, be sure to send them in, questions@afjministry.com, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, we'll see you then.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. Send us your questions and comments, and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.